Hi there, my name's krystal-bella and today I want to talk to you about disclosure. Now, in case you haven't seen some of my previous past videos, I am a member of the Dyspraxia Foundation. I am the ambassador and I talk here a lot about things with dyspraxia and autism and other different types of disabilities. So that's kind of what I want to talk about in terms of disclosure today. Now, I just want to quickly brief over what disclosure actually means. So disclosure is basically comes from the short term to disclose, which is basically to give personal information to be able to aid something greater. In terms of disclosing information about a disability or any health issues that you might face, there's always that kind of, who do I disclose it to, when should I disclose it to them, and how exactly should I go about it? For family and friends, there's no right or wrong time to go about that, but it's also good to be aware that it's entirely up to you how much information you want to disclose to them. So, for example, when I first found out that I had dyspraxia, I literally just sent a message, or I rang my parents, I can't remember, and basically just said to them, so turns out I have dyspraxia, which, in case if you didn't know what it is, and basically just went through a list of what it is, which I read off the Dyspraxia website for them, because my family, I didn't want to hide anything too much from them. I wanted them to know as much about it as I could so they could help understand me a bit better from what we've known in the past. Sometimes it's very important to disclose information to some people more than others. So, for example, if you meet someone for the first time and you're probably not going to see them again, or you're only going to see them a couple times, then you wouldn't necessarily have a need to disclose anything at all with them. You would have to be like, just so you know, I have really bad insomnia. Like, you don't need to share that with anyone. You wouldn't even need to share like what disabilities you have. I mean, you don't meet someone, shake their hand, and be like, "Hi, I'm dyslexic." You know that it's not necessary. But in some cases, it can be necessary, and it can help aid you in the future. So, for example, in your workplace, you might want to let them know about any disabilities that you might have. So, for example, I told my work that I have a neurological condition called Dyspraxia, which affects the way my mind sees things and the way that my body works around objects and such, and gave them a little bit of information on that. Now, it was entirely up to me how much information I disclosed to them. I don't have to disclose everything, just enough that will basically tell them where I need help, where I might struggle a little bit, and what kind of aid would be necessary for me to be able to complete the role that I'm in and to be able to effectively do my work. So I wouldn't necessarily need to tell them that I have struggles eating certain types of food because of the textures. They don't need to know stuff like that. They would just need to know things that sometimes I struggle to organise myself, so I may need a little extra time and patience to do things. That sometimes my hearing is over and under sensitive, so I might need to place myself in a quieter area of the room. Things like that would actually aid you in your job. You don't have to disclose all that kind of information. So I've only known about my dyspraxia since I was 18 or 19. I'm now 23, going on 24 next month, yeah. And so I'm very much come to terms with what dyspraxia is myself. So there's a lot of information that my body is disclosing to my own personal conscience. So I'm always updating my work on things that I might need help with, or if I'm struggling with things. And the same with family and friends. I quite often just say, by the way, this happened last week. I found that I actually really struggled with it. Could you help with this, this and this in the future? So you won't necessarily have to disclose in just one conversation, because sometimes it can be very difficult to disclose a whole disability in, a few short sentences. I do emphasise as well with people who are worried to disclose their disabilities to family and friends. I completely understand how difficult that can be, because it was very difficult for myself, actually. And there is no right or wrong way to go about saying it. Like I said, I can't remember how I did, but I either rang or messaged my parents. I think I actually messaged them because I was actually quite emotional at the time myself and didn't feel like I could voice my feelings and stuff like that. But sometimes just sending a message could be all it needs to be. It doesn't have to be a verbal conversation, or it can be something that leads to a verbal conversation, and maybe writing things down is your way of getting your words out to be able to explain what it is that you want to disclose to them. When it comes to an employer as well, it is very important that you do disclose this information, because this could definitely affect the way that you're treated at work, the way you're respected at work, and how you can go about getting the help that you need at work. If you don't tell your employer that you struggle in some areas, then how are they to know why it is that you struggle in some areas that other people don't struggle in? Or, you know, if you're having issues, they would like to know these things, not because they want to look down on you or anything like that. For an employer, their most important thing is making sure that their employees are working at 100%, because if they're not, then it brings the performance of everyone else down. And if their employees aren't happy, then how can you work at 100%? So if they know of any way that they can help you, it's in their best interest to help you. So don't feel afraid or worried to disclose that kind of information. I would really like for you guys to talk about it a little bit more in the comments, and how it is that you have gone about disclosing this kind of information. Like I said, there is no right or wrong way to do it, so there are multiple different ways that you can talk about those kinds of things. There is a website that I looked at earlier that talks all about disclosure, and a number of other things as well, which I think would be very helpful. And you can download it for free, which I will put in the links below, so do definitely have a look at that. It was very useful. Bye bye. Ah.